People think betrayal arrives like a slammed door. It doesn't. It arrives as a silence that learns your name. I noticed it in the way messages stopped having verbs. Home soon, busy, later. Whole evenings reduced to placeholders, the kind of words you could send to anyone, which is exactly what made them dangerous. That morning, the light was soft and ordinary. I tied my hair into a high ponytail, buttoned a white blouse, slid into jeans that fit like memory. I wasn't looking for proof. I wasn't looking for anything at all. But my laptop woke to a screen I didn't ask for. A calendar invite mirrored from his phone, flickering for a second like a stutter in the air. Lunch, 1:15, same place as last time. No name, no address, just a familiar note attached. No photos. I stared. Then I closed the lid as softly as I could and listened to the quiet. I waited for my heart to sprint. It didn't. It did something worse. It organized. The mind is cruel that way. It will sort your pain into folders before you can even scream. I made tea. I let it go cold. There are 1,000 ways to react. Mine was to catalog. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask a question I already knew he would answer with a lie gentle enough to live in the house with us. Instead, I counted the small things that had been counting me out for months. The late returns, the shower turned on before the front door closed, the new scent in the car that wasn't mine and pretended to be leather. At lunch, I sat 3 tables away. I wasn't dressed to be seen, only to remember. The room was all glass and fern and careful laughter. When they arrived, the world did not stop. No storm, no gasp, just the dull accuracy of reality. He leaned in like a man rehearsing intimacy. She laughed with the ease of someone who had not yet been assigned the job of forgiving him. I watched for 22 minutes, and then I left before the coffee. Not because it was unbearable, but because it wasn't. That's the trick of it. The worst moments are survivable in real time. They only kill you when you narrate them to yourself at night. Back home, I opened a blank document and wrote a title I didn't expect to write. If the apology never comes. Under it, I made a list that did not look like revenge. It looked like order. Change the passwords I created, and he never learned. Photograph everything I paid for that he calls ours. Print the statements, ask for nothing today. Not even the truth. I put the pages in a folder and hid it where I keep the passports. You save the most important proofs in the same place. Identity, exit, plan. When he came home, he kissed my cheek like nothing in the world had changed. Maybe for him nothing had. He asked about my day, and I told him it was quiet. That word did what I needed it to do. It put him to sleep. I lay awake and learned a new rule about love. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop waiting to be understood. He never said sorry. Not that night. Not the ones after. And in the space where an apology should have lived, something sharper grew. Not rage. Not yet. Clarity. They think heartbreak means screaming. But I know better. It comes quietly, like a faucet dripping in the dark. You don't notice it until everything else has gone still. I stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug I didn't remember making. Tea. Again. Still untouched. My second cup today. It wasn't comfort I was after. It was control. Something warm to hold when everything else felt cold. He sat across the room, typing. His fingers moved too fast for work. Too distracted. Too eager. He wasn't even pretending to concentrate anymore. I looked away before I could feel the sting rise in my throat. "Everything okay?" he asked without looking up. "Just tired," I replied. That's what we'd become. Polite strangers sharing space. Vague concern, vague replies. Like we were both playing a role in a play neither of us wanted to be in anymore. But I'd already started exiting the stage. Quietly, carefully. Not with drama, but with distance. I'd stopped looking at the photos on the wall and started seeing the cracks behind them. That anniversary picture in Italy. He'd been texting during dinner. That New Year's Eve shot. I remembered the silence after the kiss and how quickly his phone lit up. It wasn't just one thing, it was everything. Later that afternoon, I walked into the spare room, the one we called the office, though it hadn't seen real work in months. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out my old journal. The leather cover was worn, soft from years of secrets. I flipped to the back, where I used to write when I didn't want him to read, and I wrote, "He thinks I haven't noticed." That's his first mistake. I tapped the pen twice on the page, like I was sealing the thought in ink. Outside, life went on. Somewhere, someone was falling in love. Somewhere else, someone was being lied to in a kitchen like mine. But I wasn't just someone else. Not anymore. I opened the laptop, went into the shared drive he never remembered I could access. The password was still the same. The name of a dog we never got. He didn't think I'd look, but I did. A flight confirmation. 2 names, 1 hotel. He wasn't even clever. I didn't screenshot it, didn't forward it. I didn't need proof, I needed clarity, and now I had it. That night, while he slept, calm, content, convinced he was winning, I stood by the window staring at my reflection. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I smiled. Just slightly. Because the moment I knew was the moment I changed. And that was the beginning. It's funny how invisible you can become in your own life. I moved through our apartment like a ghost, floating between what was and what I knew was coming. He didn't notice. He never noticed. Not the way I paused before answering. Not the way I stopped folding his laundry. Not the way my eyes lingered on the door a second too long every morning. He thought he had time, but time was no longer on his side. The first thing I did was find out who she was. Her name, her job, her profile, all perfectly polished. A marketing executive, just like him. The kind of woman who probably didn't mean for this to happen and never wanted to hurt anyone. I printed a photo of them, the one they thought was private, hidden deep in a shared album he didn't know I could access. In the picture, they were laughing. He looked free, unburdened, and I looked at it like a chessboard. They thought I was the queen sitting still, but I was already moving the pawns. I didn't confront him. I didn't message her. I booked a hotel, 3 nights, paid in cash, under a name I used to use when I wrote short stories online. And then I called my mother. Not because I needed comfort, but because she always told me, never let a man think he broke you. She asked if everything was okay. I said, it will be. The next day, I started clearing out, quietly, one drawer at a time. Not the obvious things, not clothes or shoes. That would trigger alarm. I started with my documents, my passwords, my backup drive. I created a second bank account. Every click, every password reset, felt like shedding skin. And I smiled. It wasn't rage that fueled me. Not anymore. It was design, and design is elegant. That weekend, he went to a conference. I didn't argue. I kissed his cheek and told him to enjoy the panels. He smiled like a man who thought he was clever. While he was gone, I left the apartment. Left the plants watered. Left the bed made. Left nothing that could be used against me. Except one thing. On the coffee table in plain sight, I placed the photo of him and her. Printed, clean, undeniable. Underneath it, I wrote, "This is your first warning. I don't repeat myself." No threats, no drama, just clarity. Then I walked out. No slammed door, no suitcase. Just me and a bag I'd packed weeks ago. By the time he'd land, I'd be miles away. And the game? It had only just begun. I watched the city move past the train window. Cold glass beneath my fingertips. The kind of morning where everything looks washed out and tired. Like me. But I wasn't running. I was repositioning. The hotel I checked into was nothing special. Neutral walls, beige curtains, a desk that smelled faintly of old coffee. Perfect, untraceable, and temporary. For the first time in weeks, I slept. When I woke, I opened my laptop. Not for work, not for distraction, but to begin. I still had access to his accounts. He had never changed his passwords. He never thought he needed to. That was his first mistake. I started small, downloaded files, screenshotted transfers, forwarded copies to a new clean email. Everything he thought was buried. Every deal, every lie, every careless whisper into company accounts. I collected them all. He built his success on secrets. And now, I had them. I didn't want to destroy his life. I wanted him to watch it unravel, piece by piece, slowly, publicly. I didn't touch the money yet. That would come later. First, I planted doubt. A package arrived at his office the next morning. Inside, a USB drive. Anonymous. No note. On it, a slideshow of emails, each just a few. Enough to raise eyebrows. HR would open it. His assistant would talk. His partners would wonder. And he would sweat. I wasn't there to see it, but I imagined his face. The quiet panic, the forced smile, the desperate reaching for control in a room that was no longer his. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear him beg. Instead, I started writing again. Not just revenge plans, but stories. Fiction, sure, but not really. Pages filled with women who smiled too politely, who stayed too long, who disappeared, and then returned stronger. Women like me. Women like Maren. I signed them with a pen name I hadn't used in years, and I shared them online. They began to spread. Not viral, but steady. A comment here, a repost there. And then something strange happened. One of the stories ended up in a newsletter I knew he subscribed to. A friend had shown it to me once. Stories for Thinkers, they called it. That week's title? She watched him lie and smiled anyway. I didn't send it. I didn't need to. The world is small when you have the patience to wait. I imagined him reading it, recognizing pieces of himself in the villain. I wondered if he knew. I wondered if he was afraid. And I hoped, deeply, quietly, that he was. The city shimmered under a thin curtain of rain as I walked home that evening. Cobblestones glistened like black glass, and the streetlights mirrored themselves in every puddle, as if they lived a second life beneath my feet. I barely felt the raindrops. My mind was far too loud. Everything I had collected over the past week circled through me like a storm. Names, numbers, messages, photos, pieces of a puzzle that painted a picture he was never meant to see. I stopped in front of my building and looked up at the dark windows. My apartment stood quiet and unassuming, like a silent accomplice. A place no one suspected of hiding plans so carefully drawn. I had learned that revenge is never born in fury. It's built in silence, at kitchen tables in the dead of night with trembling fingers and tired eyes, organizing truths no one dared to speak. Inside, I sat down and spread the documents out like tarot cards. Each page, each screenshot, each record. Another step toward the moment he'd fall. He had no idea how thin the ice beneath his feet had become. I could see his face in my mind, that smug little smile he wore when he thought no one knew better. Soon, that smile would crack, just like my trust had. As I reread the last message, I felt it clearly. There was no turning back. Even if I wanted to, too much had been said. Too much had been hidden. Too much had been ruined. My name is Maren, and I will not disappear quietly. I imagine the impact, not a loud crash, but a slow fracture. A whisper to the right person. A document in the right inbox. A subtle move here and there. The kind of quiet sabotage that starts small and then swallows everything. Night dragged on. but I wasn't tired. I felt calm, almost disturbingly so, as if each breath stitched me tighter into my decision. I stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the rain-kissed streets, and I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I had finally taken back control. He took something sacred from me, something he can never return. But he forgot one thing. A woman like me doesn't just vanish. The clock struck midnight. I gathered the papers, tucked them carefully into my bag. Tomorrow, the first stone would fall, and once it did, there would be no stopping the avalanche.